Hi everyone, and welcome to tonight's Thursday night fan zone show on Leicester Fan TV. As always, I'll be joined by Josh, aka SPORTSA, and we've got a big guest who will be joining shortly, Ian Hume. He'll be joining. We'll be going over the season, summarising it briefly. Really, we'll be joined by Owynn Palmer-Atkin from Radio Leicester as well. And remember, guys, get your comments in and your views in about this season. How do you feel it went? So guys, as I mentioned there, me and Josh are back again tonight for another Thursday night fan zone show. We'll be talking about the season. It's our first one on a Thursday after the season's finished. So we've got quite a bit to talk about. We want to hear what everyone has to say about how they think the season went. I suppose, Josh, we can start a little bit from Sunday night at Manchester United. We spoke about it earlier in the week with Phil, but what are your thoughts after that? Obviously, it's I think we can look back now and say, fifth place, it's not a bad season at all. Bit disappointing, obviously, that we haven't finished in the Champions League. But what are your final thoughts on the Man United game and the season?
Yeah, so for the Man United game, obviously disappointing not to get the Champions League in the end. But in my opinion, it wasn't that bad of a performance. Obviously, both goals are fairly unlucky, of course, being the penalty, and then the last goal was a pretty stupid error. But Champions League was already done by then anyway. But my overall thoughts on fifth or not, it's debated by a lot of Leicester fans. Should we be disappointed not to get Champions League, or should we set for Europa League? In my opinion, I'm quite happy to get European football. Yes, we did bottle Champions League, it's fair to say. But overall, I'm quite happy to get the European football.
Yeah, let me just say hello to a couple of people who've joined so far. Remember, guys, get your comments in. We got a comment here from Flips. Hi to you. Thanks for joining. Andy says, started good, finished crap. Yeah, I think a lot of us will agree with that. Obviously, whether or not they agree that it was a good season or not, I think, we had a magnificent start to the season, up until Christmas.
Yeah,
and it tailed off a bit there. But I'm going to add in someone who everyone's excited to see join. Let's add in Ian Hume.
Evening, lads. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks so much for coming on.
No, it's always a pleasure. I'm keeping well. Just in the middle of getting ready to move house, so been a busy couple of weeks and just coming to the end of it now.
Whereabouts are you these days? Whereabouts are you in the country?
Tranmere.
Tranmere.
I live where I started off. My wife's from here. My kids are from here, so her family's all here. So we've lived here pretty much the whole time, apart from when I was at Leicester and maybe a year and a half when I was at Barnsley.
Yeah, well, me and Josh were just speaking there about the season. I'm sure you still follow Leicester where you can, and obviously, they're always in the news at the minute anyway, aren't they? But what's your take on this question, Ian? Good season or disappointing? Because there's two different types of fans at the minute. So what are your thoughts on it?
To be honest, you gotta say it's a good season. I know the disappointment. Listen, you guys had an incredible season a couple of years ago. You won the league, and it's set up the bar a lot higher. Everyone wants to be competing for the Prem now. And I think with how you guys started the season, I can see why people would say it's disappointing. But if you'd have offered European football at the start of the year, what would you have said? I personally, if I was a Leicester fan or Leicester staff or anything, I'd be saying, okay, European football, anything more is a bonus. And I think the fact that it was in your hands in the last game of the season to get into Champions League, I think that's a testament to the club and to the players. But if you'd have said to them at the start of the year, I think they'd have taken Europa League happily.
Yeah, you mentioned there, Ian, about how obviously it went down to the last game of the season for us to qualify for the Champions League, which is massive for a club like Leicester. I was saying to you earlier, Ian, off stream, when I first started supporting Leicester and getting into football, it was when you were kind of in and around the first team. I don't know if Josh was, it might have been a bit too young then. But obviously back then, sorry to bring it up, but that Stoke game, the last game of the season, fighting to stay in the Championship, and now where we are, it's fighting to qualify for Champions League. The club have come on leaps and bounds, haven't they?
Oh, 100%. Like you said, I was a part of that, the downside of the club, and it's hard to look back at it. Obviously, I loved every minute I was at the club, but to look back at what my last game was that game. It was hard, and then to see the way they bounced back the year after. But to say to the fans of the club then, listen, we're going to win the Prem, you'd have laughed them out the room. No, you would have. Honestly, you would have. And to say you've done it without spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds, like every other club like you look at Villa came up this year and spent 140 mil. Like, that's ridiculous. They spent 140 million and got down to the last game of the season. So for Leicester fans to be expecting to get into Champions League, or from this season, the Champions League, from the start of the season to get into Europe minimum, that's incredible.
Yeah.
The fact that they won the Premier League, that's beyond everybody's wildest dreams. The fact that you did it was possibly, or you can't even deny it, was the biggest upset in sporting history for majority of bookmakers, everything. And it was a Cinderella story that never is going to die down in Leicester fans' hearts. And I think for you guys to come out disappointed of not making Champions League is brilliant for the club. And I think you've got the right manager there. I think you've got the right manager there. I think he'll change the way some of the previous managers will play the game. You've still got Vardy on fire. So to be honest, you've got a chance of beating any team in the league. And I think it's a great place for the club to be at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the managers there, Ian. Obviously, when you joined Leicester, obviously you were still a young lad. I mean, Brendan Rodgers, we all know from the past few, 5, 6, 7 years, he's been a great manager to try and kind of bring up that talent. I bet that's a manager which you would have loved to play under, right? Yeah,
well, I think that's what Craig Levein was trying to do when he was there. He made it a lot younger squad. Obviously, he had to cut the wage budget and all that, but he had a really young team. I think playing with somebody like Brendan Rodgers would be class if he has the faith in you to keep giving you chances, and I think he does that. He's done it over the years. He did it. I'm a Liverpool fan. He did it at Liverpool. Obviously, went up to Celtic. Obviously, a little bit easier job for him. But I think he's a great manager to have there. He tries to play football the right way. He's trying to get the club it's a possession game. So sometimes you do get a little bit bored. But when you've got Jamie Vardy up front, that possession game can turn into a goal in the space of a second.
Yeah.
So, go on.
No, I was going to say, obviously, I mean, I remember you were on Leicester Fan TV a couple of months ago, talking with the guys, and you mentioned obviously Jamie Vardy, the Cinderella story. That's what the football pyramid's all about. I mean, I bet you would have loved to play with a player like Jamie Vardy in the Leicester squad back then, right? I mean, Matty Fright weren't half bad, but.
Oh, hey, I can't put anything against mine and Matty's partnership. I loved every second of it. But you ask Matty the same thing, regardless whether it's to upset me. You ask him if he had a chance to play with Vardy, and the way he plays the game, for me, it just would have been carnage for defenses. I think the way I played the game when I was at the club and the way he plays now, even at 33, the guy's a machine. So you put myself at 21-year-old and him at 21-year-old. Obviously, maybe not at 21 because he was playing non-league at the time. But you put the two of us in those two styles of play, I think it would have been an upsetting 90 minutes for a lot of people, just because we were pain in the backsides. And I think I dream of playing with somebody like him and to see where he's come from and where he got to and where he is. Like, not where he got to. Sorry, he's 33 and just won the Golden Boot against some of the best strikers in the world. So. No, it would have been class, but like I said, I can't knock Matty. Matty went on to score 30 goals a season after I left, so I must have been the weak link.
Well, Adrian's asked Tyrion, he said, Ian, who is faster, Vardy or you in your prime?
Silly question, Vardy all day long.
Would you give him a race?
I'd give him a race. I'd probably compete for the first 10 yards. But I'd beat him in the air. I'll put that one down. I would have beat him in the air in my prom.
Well,
I think that's the only thing I would have done.
Well, I think Josh is going to ask a question just before he does. I've got a question here from Robert. He says, Ian, you were class back in the day. Who do you think would make a perfect strike partner? I'm guessing he means for Vardy. Have you got any thoughts on that? Because we're gonna touch briefly on potential transfers and all that, because we're getting into that window. Anyone in mind? Danny
Ings would be a hard one for me to put in the same team as Vardy, because they're both poachers, they're both goal scorers.
Yeah.
Danny Ings, I loved him at Liverpool, but he had such a bad injury record with him. So the best thing for his career was to leave. And he's proved he's a natural goal scorer. Him and Vardy are okay. There's a pace difference. Ings hasn't got the same speed Vardy has, but I think they're too similar player. It's the same as like that's putting in like a Timo Pukki into the same list.
Yeah.
He's a goal scorer. Who would you bring in to play alongside him? Is a tough one. I think it would have to be more of a number 10. Allow Maddison to drop back and play with Ndidi or whoever, and allow them to control the game. And then you have somebody who gets in the box. Like it's a hard one. Somebody like the style of a Firmino or somebody like that, who's a striker.
Yeah.
Who wants to get in the box and who allows Vardy to play his game. And I think it's brilliant how Brendan Rodgers has got a different side of Vardy's game this season. He's not asking him to do too much running. He wants him to be within that 18-yard box. And I think somebody who would be a good foil for that would be perfect for him.
Yeah. And Josh, I think you had a question which you were going to ask.
Yeah, so Ian, obviously you mentioned it's been a brilliant season for Leicester. What is I don't know, it's up to you. What type of thing has impressed you most from Leicester this season?
I think just the way they continually compete. Very seldom do they get steamrolled, even though they're still, unfortunately, and this is no detriment, is they are still the minnows of the top 6. Yeah. If you look at them, they are the minnows. Yeah. Yet they play against these top sides, and very, very seldom do they lose by more than a goal. If sometimes get results, don't get me wrong, but when they do lose, it's not like, okay, well, our bubbles burst, we've lost 4-0. It doesn't happen all the time. I think that's something that's great for them, is they're competing with these top teams. Like, you look at the money that these top sides, even Liverpool haven't spent as much money as the likes of your Uniteds and Cities and whatever, but Leicester's up there competing. I think that's the best thing, is they're not, when they won the league, everyone looked back and said, oh, one season won that. Well, they're competing for the top 4 against your Chelseas, against your Liverpool's, Arsenals. They're competing. I think that's the best thing, is they're establishing themselves as one of the top clubs in the country. And I think that is what they've got to take out of it more than anything, regardless whether we lost on the last game of the season. Okay, upset, definitely, because it was there. But I think the fact that it's a constant competition to get in that top 4 and they're one of them, I think that's the biggest thing I'd take away from it.
And do you see Leicester, pushing on and doing quite well in Europe next year? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think Leicester can kind of, build and build, carry on going, from one level to another every year? How do you see that?
I think to compete, they're going to have the bigger squad. They're going to have to have strength and depth. You can't afford to not have players to fill voids if somebody gets injured, if somebody gets suspended. So if they want to, like I said, continually compete with these top teams, the owner's got to put his hand in his pocket. I'm not saying go out and spend 500 mil, like that's ridiculous, but I think they need to have a squad of first-team players and first-team guys who are demanding first-team football, not guys who are happy to get cameos. And you look around your teams around the league. Like I continually go back to Liverpool, but you look at Liverpool, and if you compare their team to the likes of your Chelseas and Man Uniteds and Man Cities, they're shallow as well. And I think that's something that Leicester has as well. They need to get established Premier League or European, like Champions League. I'd say even Champions League. I wouldn't even look for Europa League players unless they're standouts. You need to establish, say, probably 16 to 18 proper like Premier League, Champions League players to be able to compete throughout the Premier League, throughout the FA Cup, throughout Europe. I think the club does need to get a deeper squad, and I think that's something that Brendan Rodgers will be highlighting when he goes in for his end of season talks about what he needs to bring in as far as transfer targets goes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we may as well just get into the transfer side of things now. I mean, what I'm about to ask ties in with what Phil has said. Phil has said Leicester's still a buy and sell club. Now, there's been a lot of discussions. I don't know how many Twitter accounts, Leicester Twitter accounts you follow on social media, Ian, but a big debate is whether we should sell or keep Ben Chilwell at the moment. Obviously, a lot of Leicester fans think that he wouldn't really be a massive loss, but surely the squad depth we're going to need next season in Europe is just another reason to keep hold of him.
Yeah, it's tough with the current market, and I don't think Leicester are a buy and sell club anymore. Like I think the biggest coup will be if the rumors are believed, or I don't know if it's confirmed yet. If Maddison signs a new deal, if that happens, that'll prove to myself and to, I'm guessing, thousands and thousands of Leicester fans that the club is in a point where they don't want to sell. And Chilwell won't go unless he gets the right price. Brendan Rodgers is like that. Unless he gets a price that he thinks he can replace for like for like or better, he won't sell him. He won't just say, okay, well, his head's turned. He won't do that. I think he's the type who, okay, if we get 70 mil for Ben Chilwell, let's be honest, 70 mil for a left back who didn't have his greatest season. If he didn't to what he did last season. I think 70 mil will turn his head, but I wouldn't be looking to say, okay, well, you're out. Give me 40 mil or 35 mil. Yeah. Let's get somebody else in, because you won't replace him. You won't replace him in today's budget and today's market. You won't replace a Ben Chilwell for that amount of money. But if the right price comes, unfortunately, at any club, it's like again, like I said, Liverpool, if they try to sell Salah, they won't sell him for 50 mil if he says he wants to go. They'll sell him for 150 mil. If they get 150 mil, you can't say no.
No.
So it's horses for courses, and I think Ben Chilwell will go for the right price if he's adamant and the club are adamant that they can get a replacement. Other than that, I don't see him going anywhere.
No, and it might turn out like the Harry Maguire saga last season. We'll keep asking for more, and then when that right figure comes in, we might just pull the trigger and say, there you go. Obviously, just sticking on transfer a little bit. Someone mentioned here. Let me just find the comment. Someone asked, what positions in the Leicester squad do you think we need to strengthen on, in particular this transfer window?
Again, going with strength and depth, you need another top striker. Iheanacho, I'm sorry, hey, listen, he's played Premier League for the last 4 years now. I'm not a massive fan. When you have, in comparison, his partner is Jamie Vardy. When you compare that, I think they need a more out and out and more established striker. I also think centre backs. I think Soyuncu's been incredible. I think we desperately needed him against United, and I've seen the red card, and I think that was a bit petulant from himself. But I think you need another centre half. You've got Big Wes is class, but he obviously knows himself. He's at that age. Johnny Evans as well. He was class last season. Like, he was brilliant last season. I think this season, towards the end, he tailed off. He looked tired towards the end of the season. So I think another established centre half, and I hope, again, like I said about the Maddison ordeal with the signing his new contract, if that happens and you can keep hold of Soyuncu, I think that's two massive. For me, that would be two massive signings in the transfer market. Forget everything else. But I think you need an established centre forward and a not overly experienced, but an experienced centre half.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Ian. What about you, Josh? Have you got anything in particular? Obviously, transfers.
Yeah, I have to agree with Ian. I think obviously going into the European competitions, I think we need to overall strengthen in all areas. But if you had to pinpoint to one, I agree with Ian with the striker. I also think we could do with a winger. It depends who that could be. But overall, just like Ian says, if you're going into, obviously we're in European competitions, I think we need to strengthen all over the pitch and replace age in certain positions, especially centre back as well, in my opinion, is vital. But yeah, to be honest, I have to agree with Ian.
Yeah, and Ian, obviously another boost for Leicester City this summer is the new training ground, the new £100 million training ground, which we'll be moving into. I think they're done with Beaver Drive now. I think there's no more training sessions going on there. What's your best memory of Beaver Drive? Because I'm sure you've got a few, but what's one of your favourites?
just loved it, to be honest. It was closed off from everything. Like you'd obviously have the fans watching you training and all that in the back garden. And,
yeah.
To be honest, it was in great nick, and even with the purse strings pulled in a little bit when I was there, it was in fantastic condition. You had so many different areas to train on it. It'll be sad to see that one go because I loved it. But I funny enough, I actually looked up at where they were going to have the new one, and it's up Loughborough, kind of Loughborough way, isn't it? The new facility
out that way.
Looks incredible. So if you're going to say goodbye, then no better way to leave than to go into that. It's like selling up a Mercedes and getting an Aston Martin. It's one of those. It's where the club is, and that's the thing. Like that's what everyone needs to start realizing is the club has sights on something far bigger than anyone would have dreamed of 10 years ago. So you get this facility. The stadium's already incredible, and I know they can expand it if and when they want to, if they get the money. The club is moving in the right direction, and they're establishing themselves as one of the big six, and I think that's incredible.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the last things I want to ask you, Ian, it's just quickly going back to transfers. It's something I do ask quite a lot on the shows. Now that we know who have been relegated, it is to do with transfers again. The question is, out of the teams that have gone down this season, any of those players in those squads, obviously I know Iheanacho now is about to sign for Manchester City. Any players in those three squads who you fancy could do a good job at Leicester?
It's a tough one because, like, you've got your obvious ones, your Jack Grealish's. Like, he would be incredible on the left wing for Leicester. No disrespect to Harvey Barnes, but you put a Grealish in there who's going to demand attention off defenders and off midfielders and all that. I think he would be incredible, but again, he's going to cost 100 million, and that's something. Instead of spending 100 million on a Grealish, spend 50 million on two players, and you're getting two class players. And to be honest, there's not many. Do you bring in Wilson, who's kind of a carbon copy of Jamie Vardy? Phil Holloway's just put up Coutinho. What a signing he would be.
Yes.
And you would get him for half the price you get Jack Grealish. You bring in Coutinho to play on the left wing behind Vardy and alongside Maddison, and I think you keep Chilwell. You've got somebody who's going to defend. He doesn't have to bomb on like he does and get caught out of position like he did a lot this season. Coutinho just does what he wants. I think, hey, as a Liverpool fan, if you bring him back into the country and it's not for Man United, I'd be buzzing.
Well, yeah, I mean, Andy Meadows mentioned Brooks. Have you seen much of him? Obviously, the Bournemouth Welsh winger, he looks like a good player, a good young player.
He's very, very good player, but he's had that injury this season, and you wonder, is that going to recur? Is it going to be one of those? I think he played maybe 8-9 games this year. Like, that's bad for them because, well, and you've also got Fraser who absolutely shot them in the foot. If they'd as a Bournemouth player, I'd be knocking on his door. I'd be wondering, like, what the hell do you think you're doing? Like, he was a player who was a match winner, and I'd seen it too many times across. Like, I don't understand people. Yeah. Like the boy at Charlton did the same thing. That Lyle Taylor, leading goal scorer, and I've got a move set up. Well, and what? We made you into the player you were. I looked at his Wikipedia, and he's done nothing until Charlton. And Fraser the same. No disrespect to him, he's a very, very good player. And I know Liverpool were in for him, and a couple other big teams were in for him. But he was nothing before Bournemouth.
Yeah,
like you've just been paid for 3 months of doing absolutely nothing, and we need you for another month. Sign the extension. If you're as good as you think you are, you'll do well to the end of the season. Fraser could have kept them up. With Brooks being out, with Josh King and Wilson not being in the best vein of form, obviously Solanke wasn't scoring goals until the last 3 weeks. Ryan Fraser could have kept them up.
Yeah.
And if I'm one of his teammates, if I'm his captain, if I'm that cook, I'm knocking on his door, swinging.
Yeah.
Because he's absolutely shot them, and they're the types of players I don't think I would want in the door if I was a Leicester fan. He's a very good player. But Brooks, on the other hand, if his injury's over, he's a tidy player. But is he much better than that Harry Wilson? Do Leicester look at a Harry Wilson, a nice left-footed ball player? Okay, he played for Derby. I understand that, but tidy footballer and scores goals. Didn't play as many games this year as he probably should have. But They're the types of players, like, you've got Demarai Gray, you've got Harvey Barnes, you've got two, like, is Demarai Gray going to continue sulking if he's not playing? Is he, for me, if I was to look, I'd look at Brooks. Brooks is a tidy footballer if he can stay fit. Callum Wilson's proven he had a tough season this year. Josh King, but would he be happy not playing?
Yeah.
Because realistically, you're not going to play every week if Vardy's fit.
Yeah,
So,
we've said that a few times on it. It's difficult to find a striker who's going to be happy to come in and be second fiddle to Vardy, and obviously who's good enough to do that. Just before I move on to, obviously I asked for one last question from Josh. Someone put here, Todd Cantwell, also another good player who's gone down.
That's to be honest, I forgot about him. When you think about Norwich, all you think about is Pookie, because he started the season so well. And Cantwell, to be honest, he's a very, very good player. He did so well in the Champ, got them up. Him and Pookie were incredible in the Champ. Got up to the Prem, started off really well, but obviously players who are as good as they are technically and obviously statistically, they get the goals and assists. When the team's in a bad vein of form, unfortunately, they do drop off. Cantwell, thankfully, didn't for them. He kind of continued playing. I know Liverpool were supposedly interested in whether he's a fit for Liverpool, but I think you bring him in, him and Harvey Barnes. If you're not going to get a top player to play left side of midfield, him and Harvey Barnes could be good for in and out. But would either of them be content sitting on the bench? Like Demarai Gray playing on the right wing, you see him kind of always sulking about when he comes on, he doesn't look happy. And you've got Ayoze Perez, who I know he thinks he's a striker, but is he quick enough to be a number 9? Is he sharp enough, like a Maddison type player, to be a number 10? Or do you play him out wide? And is he a winger? So he's kind of one of those in between. When he was at Newcastle, I thought the same thing. He's an in between type of player. He's not exactly a striker, not exactly a winger. So it depends. It depends who goes again. If you've got those guys, then they're not going to be happy being third fiddle if you bring in a big name. So if they go, then maybe you have a bit of extra money in the purse to go and buy. It's interesting. That's what everyone loves about the transfer market is how high do you set your sights? Because do you want a Champions League player? Do you want a Europa League, or do you want a Championship?
Yeah, and we went for a few Champions League players, didn't we, last time, Leicester, and it didn't really work out. Some of the players we brought in. Josh, have you got one more question for Ian there?
Yeah, so let's just quickly say, if you bring in a few more players just to strengthen going into next season, do you think Leicester could really compete in the Europa League? And if we go far, do you think we'll be able to compete as well in the Premier League as well next season?
Again, it reverts back to what we were talking about. Again, the strength and depth is your players are good enough. Like, that's not your start. If you were to be able to play, you're starting 11 for 65 games, play the Prem, play the Cup, play the European games. If you were able to play, you're starting 11, you compete. But it's the ones that come in that sometimes aren't up to mark. If Ricardo's back fit, Chilwell's playing, Soyuncu, and you bring in the top centre back, your back four with Schmeichel, it's as good as anything in the league. But it's when they're out, like you've noticed with Ricardo being out and Justin coming in. He's been very good, but he's still very young. So it depends. It all depends on strength and depth. But I don't see any reason why they can't compete in Europe without sort of giving up competing in the Premier League. So it's going to be they've got I'd say a long summer, but they've got a big month ahead because they've got a couple of weeks off the teams, and apart from the Champions League teams, they've got a couple of weeks off, and then they're back at it. So Brendan Rodgers and my old mate Mike Stowell gonna have a tough couple of weeks and try and get people through the door.
Yeah, well, look, Ian, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Obviously, like I said, I've been seeing some of the ex-players that Phil's been having on the shows, and I was waiting for one a bit more my age. So when you came on, I thought you'll have to come on again. So honestly, thank you so much for coming on, and hope to chat with you again in the future sometime. Yeah,
my pleasure as always, guys.
Cheers, thank you, Ian.
All right, take care.
Right, Josh, well, that was good, wasn't it? It was lovely to chat with Ian, obviously get his views on the season and obviously upcoming transfers and things like that. Obviously, we've got another good guest coming on now. Obviously we've got Owynn from Radio Leicester. Yeah. So we're just about to we'll get him in now in a moment just to get his views, and because obviously I spoke with him before the United game, so it'll be good to chat with him. Obviously after it. Let me just see a few of the comments before we add him in. Jack says Leon Bailey, so I'm guessing he's suggesting him as a transfer. He played with Ndidi, didn't he? At his previous club. Ross says, listen, we got Steve Howard from Derby. He wasn't that bad. Jack says Giroud from Chelsea on a free. What you reckon? Is Giroud at the end of his contract? I didn't know that. Or
no, to be honest, I'm not really sure. But if he is, I'll definitely take him. But yeah, I'm not too sure.
Jack, Facebook user says Watkins looks a good prospect. We're linked with obviously Ben Rama as well. I don't know how they're going to get on. Obviously, if Brentford end up getting promoted, it might be a bit of a struggle to get them in. But let's add in Owen now. Hello, Owen. How are you?
Good evening, fellas. How are we?
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad. Thank you. Thanks for coming on again today. So, I mean, we spoke before the Manchester United game. Obviously, we were positive. 1-0, Maguire own goal, all of that. Now the dust has settled, so I think we needed that time after the game to just let the dust settle. What are your thoughts on the Manchester United game?
Well, it was disappointing, wasn't it? I don't think any Leicester fan could get away from that. There was a disappointing result, and the drop-off in particular, disappointing from coming into Project Restart, even coming into this year, actually. 14 points clear going into that Newcastle game on New Year's Day, and to drop off that far and allow Manchester United to catch you, it was just one weekend too soon, wasn't it? But let's be right. The Champions League places didn't slip away because they lost to Manchester United. It's because they didn't beat Norwich at the King Power Stadium. It's because they didn't beat Norwich away from home or get anything at Carrow Road at all. It's because they drew against Watford. They drew against Brighton at the King Power Stadium. There's 4 games that we can talk about that if the Foxes had taken one win from any of those, then or even a couple of points, they would have found themselves in the Champions League spots. But I don't think it's too bad a thing being in the Europa League. Yes, it's a bit of a missed opportunity. It's something we sort of discussed on Radio Leicester that this season's Premier League, bar Liverpool, has been relatively average. There's not been too many standout teams in there. Even Manchester City haven't been able to play to their normal standard as well. So it was a chance for Leicester to really grasp something and go into the Champions League spots. But they finished in the Europa League spots, and European football was the aim at the start of the season. That's what they've come away with. And European football is still a huge achievement for Leicester because, as you heard, you've just been speaking to Hume. You know, he was at the club, 10, 11 years ago? And where were Leicester then? In his final game, he spoke about that Stoke away game, relegated to League One. If you'd have said in 2009 to any one of us, you know, or any Leicester fan, you know, in 11 years' time, you're going to be qualifying for the Europa League, and you'd have won the Prem as well, then I think you would have taken it. Disappointing, but still a positive end to the season, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, Owen mentioned it there, Josh. The game, it wasn't the Man United game that obviously lost the Champions League for us. It was the games before that. I mean, I'm just going to mention a few fixtures here. Bournemouth away, Everton at home, Brighton at home, Watford away, Norwich away, Burnley away, Southampton at home. We got 2 points from them games. I mean, it just wasn't good enough that part of the season, was it, Josh?
No, not at all. Just like Owen says, we did so well at the start of the season, just to fall off like that. It's disappointing. And in those type of games, for a team going for Champions League football, we need to be winning those, at least getting a point away from home. Just like I said, like teams like Norwich, we only picked up 1 point against a really poor Norwich side. No disrespect, 20th place, miles off staying up as well. So it's very disappointing to just drop points in those games. If you think about it, a couple more points in those, no disrespect to those teams, pretty easy games. Champions League really could be ours. So it's important.
Yeah, and when we discussed it last week, Owen, and obviously just now with Hume, transfer window. We keep saying it, but it's so obvious. We have to strengthen the squad. Like, we have to. There's no doubt about that, right? Oh, I've lost him. There he is.
Yeah. Am I back? Am I back? Good. Squad strengthening is huge this summer. This is after the Premier League winning season, Leicester missed a huge opportunity to go and strengthen the team and really push on as a club to try and challenge the elite of English football for the next few years, and they failed in that. And they went with Ahmed Musa, they went with Islam Slimani, players like that, and didn't.
Let's give it a minute.
Yeah, sorry.
Whatsoever. Yes, they had a good run.
Oh, you're cutting out a bit there, Owen. Just a little bit. Wait for you to come back. See
Am
if.
I back? Do I
yes,
keep losing you?
I can hear you now. Yeah. There we go.
You can hear me now.
Yeah, you're back now.
Good. So yeah, no, they failed. They failed in the season after the Premier League winning season in terms of their transfer. So this is a huge window for them. They've got to go out and strengthen, and they've got to really get the players that they go out and buy right. Because if they don't get it right this time, it'll be another 3-4 seasons maybe before they can rebuild to that. The big one for me, I heard you talking about it earlier, Ben Chilwell. If that Ben Chilwell move happens and he does go, and there is big money involved, like there was with the Harry Maguire deal, and there's every chance that there will be, because Leicester won't settle for a fee that is less than their valuation. If that deal happens, the whole transfer market will then start, because there'll be money in circulation within English football that the Foxes can go and spend on other players from other sides. And then that kick-starts everything going, and clubs can then go out and buy someone because they can move someone else out. And that will be the move that will kickstart this whole transfer window. And for 70 million, if that's the fee that they end up getting, anywhere between 60 and 70 million, which is probably the worth of Ben Chilwell at this moment in time, that can help fund maybe 2 or 3 very, very good players who can further strengthen the squad that Leicester have.
Yeah, and a couple of people mentioning Ben Rama from Brentford, Ollie Watkins from Brentford. I would imagine if they come up, it might be difficult to sign them players. But what are your thoughts on them? Let's say, if they don't go up. Do you think they'd be good signings for the club? Josh, we'll go with you, Josh.
All right.
Players that...
Oh, you're back. Go on, Owen. Go on.
Yeah, go on,
no, they're good players. They're good players. There's no doubt about that. But they're Championship players, and they haven't played in the Premier League. Unproven in the Premier League. So Leicester need players that can strengthen the squad. That's number one that they need. They need number 2, players that can cope in the Premier League week in, week out, and they need players who are good enough to play in European football. And they're the 3 things that they need. Now, are those players the players that can do that? Do they tick all 3 boxes? Well, there's certainly, they are good players, and there's no doubt about, the likes of Ollie Watkins and Ben Rama. They have good skill sets, and they would maybe, they fit the profile, don't they? Young, and they fit within that system that Brendan Rodgers could play. So yes, they fit within that. Could they play in the Premier League week in, week out? Maybe not. I think they're going to be squad depth players, and I think they'll only probably get them if Brentford stay down, because if Brentford come up, then you're going to be paying even more money, because then Brentford are going to have to go out and buy players of their own as well. If they stay down, you might be able to get them, particularly, and that's the key with Brentford at the moment, their new stadium. If they can, they've got to pay that off. They've got to get out of Griffin Park and get into their new stadium. So if they stay down, then those players, I'm sure, will move. If they come up, then it'll be very difficult to get them out of there.
Yeah, and Josh, Robert says here, Mitrovic. Well, he said too temperamental for me, but there was another one here. What about Mitrovic? What are your thoughts on that kind of player? If we were going to go for a striker in the window, would that be the kind of striker you'd look at, or not?
Yeah, potentially. I think we do need a different type of player to Vardy, and more of a player who can head the ball. But obviously, we've been linked with Luka Jovic from Real Madrid as well. But Mitrovic, he could be a good signing. He's had a few years in the Premier League as well with Fulham, so he is used to the league. Obviously, he probably won't be starting that many amount of games. It comes back to the same thing again. Will Mitrovic want to sit on the bench for a large portion of the games behind Vardy and possibly feature in European competitions? But overall, if you were going to sign Mitrovic, I would be fairly pleased. It gives us a different option on the plan B as well. We've seen it since football has returned. But I think we've been missing a player like him, like a Slimani, when we're lumping the ball into the box, someone who can really head the ball and make things happen. So, yeah, so Ross just mentioned George Hurst, who is a similar player. But overall, I'll be happy with Mitrovic if he did come.
And Owen,
the only thing I would say though,
yeah.
with Mitrovic is that, do you honestly think that Brendan Rodgers is going to play a system which allows the ball to be just pumped into the box to a big man. And I don't think we saw this under Claude Puel. People would say, yeah, they need a big striker, need Ulloa, need Slimani, those sort of players. I don't see it. I don't see a big striker coming in whatsoever. If he's a big striker, and we spoke about this, didn't we, last week, Locks, that if he's a big striker who can link the play, get it, move it quickly, one two touch and move it, then great. But I can't see a player being brought in just because he's a big man, just because he can head a ball, late into a game and whatnot, because the Foxes have moved on from that kind of style, I think. I don't see it happening myself, that a player, and if Mitrovic can prove that he can get the ball back to goal and play and then run at defender, and receive the ball to feet, then he could be the player that fits in that. That's why, personally, I think Jovic is a better fit for bringing in another striker rather than bringing in a big man.
Yeah, well, Mick has said here we need to get rid of the deadwood as well. Now, I think this is a bit of a difficult one at the minute because we need the squad depth. But do you think there's a fine line in between? What's your opinion on that, Owen? Do you think that we should look to get rid of any players, considering that we're going to be playing so many games next season?
Yeah, I think there are players that should be moved on. Only one or two max, though, because you have to remember that they've already moved on players like Andy King, etc. I could see Matty James leaving, but I know Brendan Rodgers thinks very highly of him as well. But we haven't seen Matty James project restart ever since he came back from his injury as well. Maybe a pre-season will do him good, because before he picked up this huge long spell of injuries, he was playing very well for Leicester. But does he get in front of an Ndidi or a Tielemans? Probably not. Does he get in front of a Pratt? Probably not. Does he get even in front of Hamza? No. And we've seen that Brendan will bring on non-police Mendy instead of Matty James as well. I could see Matty James being moved on, but other than that, I think you're struggling when you're looking around for players who maybe they should be moved on. They've got their three goalkeepers in Jakupovic, Ward and Schmeichel. They've got two right backs. They've got three left backs at the minute, but we'll have to wait and see about Ben Chilwell. They just need more players. Maybe there's one or two on the fringes that they could get rid of, but they need to bring a real depth into this squad now if they want to continue competing at the level they have played on this season and get better. Yeah,
and there's one more transfer question I want to ask both of you. I'll start with you, Josh. I think I know what Owen's answer to this is going to be. Someone's put Nacho improves greatly. Is there more to come? Now, I've seen a few things today linking clubs being interested in Nacho. I personally think it would be ridiculous if we were to offload him this summer. What about you, Joe? I think it's a player that we need to keep, and I think he's shown glimpses that you mentioned it last week, Owen. He's not a player to just be kind of disregarded. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, 100% have to agree. I think he's came on leaps and bounds this season. I think we have to credit to Brendan Rodgers for that. And I think his partnership with Jamie Vardy up front is also improving as well. Iheanacho is that type of player to come short, pick the ball up, spread it out wide, and then lots of Vardy can get into the middle and make runs. So yeah, but if my opinion, we have to keep Iheanacho, especially we need that squad depth up front as well. It may rule out potentially going to get a new striker, because I really do think Iheanacho could, in a few years' time, obviously when Vardy possibly will be moving on, he could be the man to replace him. So we have to keep Iheanacho. I have seen the links to him with a move to Newcastle as well. But no, we have to keep him.
And Owen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Newcastle will take any striker they've got, considering they got that donkey and John Linton up front. But I agree with you, Locks. It'd be absolutely criminal if the club offloaded him this summer, because any other summer, if they hadn't qualified for European football, there might have been a chance maybe if they wanted to moving on. But yeah, it would be a huge shame if they were to move Kelechi on, but also it'd be the wrong decision, because he is a striker who has proven his worth. He's been very, very good in Project Restart. And Brendan Rodgers spoke about him last season, and towards the end of the season, when he was being asked these sort of questions about, does he feature in your future plans? And he was like, yeah, of course he does. He really does feature in my plans. And we've seen the confidence grow in Kelechi. Even though he's been on the bench, when he's been coming on, he's been looking a lot better, sharper, linking the player a lot more, running at players. His finishing's improved. He's clinical when he comes on as well, when he gets a chance in front of goal. And I think going forward, with Jamie Vardy, 33 years old, you're going to need players in behind who can support Vardy as and when is needed. And Kelechi Iheanacho is the perfect fit for that, because he knows how the team play. He obviously offers that strength and depth that the club need right now. And come on, I don't think he's the sort of player that the Foxes need to be getting rid of right now. They need to be focusing on players coming in the door, not out.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Owen, just want to touch on this briefly before we finish, and I mentioned it to Ian Hume as well. New training ground next season. Like I said, it's another boost for the club. It's another push forward, really, in our facilities and all of that. What are your thoughts on obviously the new training ground and how much that's going to benefit us going forwards?
It's going to benefit the club in so many different ways. Not only have they got a top of the range training ground, with all the benefits for the players already at the club, but it's also a big selling point to players who might be coming in. All these huge teams like Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester United, Arsenal have wonderful training ground complexes. They got the big stadium. It's a big club feel when you go to those kind of clubs. Whereas Leicester might not have had that necessarily pull that for players incoming that those sides sort of have. But if they were to get a stadium expansion, when they move into this training ground this summer, it's a bigger team feel, it's a bigger club feel that the Foxes are now going to have. Not to mention, like I say, all the benefits that they get from that. It's really, you can see it being the Manchester City kind of style. If you've ever been to the Etihad Stadium, if you turn and look one way, you can see the training ground. There's a bridge that goes over to the stadium, and it feels a little bit like that. Top class training ground, top class stadium, and then that helps bring in top class players to help the club push on. So it's a huge thing for the club. And Beaver Drive is lovely. We all love Beaver Drive. It's quaint, it's wonderful. It's in the middle of Leicester, and we know already that the club haven't got rid of that ground at this moment in time. So we'll have to wait and see what they do with that. I'm sure there's some exciting plans that are in place for that, but with the first team moving to this new training ground, it can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and obviously Blue Van Man, the legend there, has said it. Obviously, new training ground shows ambition, and get the stadium expansion shows we're going forward, which is 100% true. I have got one more question for you both, actually. It's another transfer question. Quickly, Owen, one player, if you could, sign any player right now for Leicester in this window, who would it be?
One player right now. Wow, yeah. That is a player that's on the spot. Where do they need to strengthen the most? Where have they been caught out the most? It's either centre half or a striker. Centre half they've been fine with this season, but with Bennett leaving, it does leave a bit of a hole in there. But I think striker is probably the place where they need to strengthen the most this season. So I'd like to see them bring someone like a Jovic in this season. I think he'd be a fantastic addition to the squad. He has the qualities to play European football. It allows him to sort of bed into the Premier League, as we saw with Soyuncu. It's really helpful for the players to have a season or so to bed in. So I'd go with Jovic. Yeah, I think he would certainly be one that would strengthen the squad in the right area.
And you, Josh?
It's difficult. I'm probably going to go the opposite. I'm going to go with a centre back. Obviously Johnny Evans aging as well. We possibly could do another centre back, but it's very, very difficult. I've had to pinpoint to one player. I would have said Ake, but obviously looks like he's going to Manchester City. But so I may go with the Juventus centre half, Mary Demirio. I don't know how you say his name. He's Turkish international alongside Soyuncu. And I think if he could bring him to the King Power Stadium, he's got European experience on the Juventus as well. So obviously he's used to play next to Soyuncu. So possibly if he could bring him and Soyuncu alongside each other as a centre back pair, that could be good. But yeah, it's very difficult to just pinpoint one type of player in one position.
Yeah, I think we were linked with Demiral, right, weren't we? And he did his ACL or something earlier in the season.
Yeah, Demiral, he's, as you say, Josh, Turkish centre-half, very, very strong in the air. We spoke to someone who follows Juventus, Italian journalist called Mina Rizuki, and she said that he was the heir to Chiellini and Bonucci. She said he was a true leader, and it was such a shame that he actually did do his ACL as well. So that is high praise, indeed. If you're the heir to one of those two centre halves, then you're not going to be bad, are you? The Foxes were interested in him. We're led to believe, back in January. But they did say he would cost north of £40 million, which in these times, the Chilwell transfer, if that goes through, as I said earlier, it gets the whole market moving, doesn't it?
I think that would be a great sign, to be honest with you. But yeah, obviously, once again, thanks to both of you for coming on. Owen, I'm sure we'll have you on again in the future, hopefully.
Thanks for having me.
When there's some official transfer news and we're not just obviously making it all up. And Josh, obviously, you'll be on next week anyway. So thank you both for coming on again. All right.
Cheers, lads.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Take care. So, guys, get your final views, get your final comments in before we end the stream tonight. Blue Van Man says Bennett was given back. Yes, he was. I don't think we'll be. I don't think we'll be putting in a £5 million bid for him anytime soon. A few people putting in their ideal transfers, I believe. So Jamie says, do a Gray for maximum swap deal. Get that Gucci headband over to the KP. Bradley says poor at the back for me. So yeah, I think he's obviously saying that he would like a centre half in the transfer window. Ross has said Koulibaly. I think that would cost an awful lot of money there. And Jamie also says Ramsdale from Bournemouth to replace Casper. So yeah, there's a few options there. So yeah, guys, obviously thank you once again all for who have clicked in. Thanks to Owen from Radio Leicester for joining us, and obviously thanks to Ian Hume for joining the stream tonight and having a chat with us. Obviously, hopefully we'll have him on again, like Owen, when we've got some actual confirmed transfer news that's gone through. So yeah, obviously it's going to be one of them things. Obviously the next few weeks it's just transfer news. There's no games to kind of report on until the pre-season, if there is one, and obviously we'll be back full on next Premier League season anyway. So thanks again everyone for obviously watching tonight. As I mentioned as always, there's the links for the socials, so you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at Leicester Fan TV, and as well thanks to the sponsors here below who let us obviously help us provide the free content for you guys every week. One thing I will say, remember, a free shirt now. Leicester's new home kit for next season is out, and you can win one for free on Leicester Fan TV. So just go to www.leicesterfantv.com, click on win a free shirt, put your details in, and you will be in the draw to win a brand new home kit. I can't wait to get mine. So once again, guys, thanks to Josh for joining me, thanks to Owen for joining me, and thanks to Ian Hume for joining me. And yeah, we will see you next time. Cheers.